Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Hess, and I am going to go over the updated strands and standards for teaching as a profession three. So just a little bit about myself, which is really awkward talking into a camera and telling you about yourself, or telling you about myself. Um, I taught the teaching as a profession three when it was the introduction to education class, only the CE class for about 10 years, 9 or 10 years at Syracuse High School, one of my favorite classes to teach. Now I am at Davis High School and I'm a CTE coordinator and I am over the education pathway. So I work with the teachers within my district with who are teaching this class. So I don't know how many of you, this is a brand new class for you to teach or have been doing it for years, but you are going to love teaching the TAP 3, the Teaching as a Profession 3 class. It's great. I love seeing the excitement of the kids and how much they want to be teachers, or even some that decide that they don't want to be teachers after they're going through and seeing what teachers actually do, which is great either way. But the excitement that the kids have and sharing their education experiences is a great thing to have. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm going to share here, and then I'm going to start this. So, all right. So don't worry, I'm not going to read a PowerPoint to you. I just wanted to share some of the key things with you, especially for those teachers who are not CTE teachers, to help them find the different things. So we're just going to go through the updates for the strands and standards. So to find the strands and standards, if you've never found them before, I would actually bookmark that final site, but you're going to go to schools.utah.gov, departments. I'm going to show you how to do all of this. This is just the course down for it. So I'm going to click on here. Once you get to the state website, if you'll come down to departments and programs and then click on career and technical education, it'll take you to the career and technical education site, and it gives you more information. If you're not a CTE teacher, you might want to look into more of the CTE aspects, as teaching as a profession three is part of the CTE program. Up at the top, you'll see the three bars. Click on the three bars. I'm going to go into CTE career clusters, and you can see all of the career clusters that they actually have here. And one of them is education and training. Now you'll notice that there's also a pathway. Education is a pathway too, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. So we come to just the overview of education and training. You can find out more by clicking on the cluster. But if you come over to course information and then go into K-12 teaching as a profession, you'll see at the very bottom here, teaching as a profession three. Now this falls under the pathway. So the back up here, the K through 12 teaching as a profession pathway. So students will be able to complete a pathway by taking the courses within this area. If you teach on or click on teaching as a profession three, it comes up with the strands and standards. Now the ones posted online right now are the old ones, though new ones will be posted at the end of this conference. And so you'll be able to have them, but I'm also going to share with you what they are. That's how they are found. I always bookmark this site. I also save the strands and standards just onto my computer, so it's an easy find for me to find them, but I always bookmark the website as well. So just to help you know where all of that information is actually located. Okay, now we're gonna go back here. So once you have the information, I've broken down each of the strands into different slides, and we're just gonna go over all of these. So the first strand says students will compare and contrast the different roles and temperaments needed in various careers in education and find, identify, and develop a personal philosophy of education. Sorry, my phone is ringing. You get to see what my daily life is like here. So strand one or standard one, under strand one, you're just going to have the students compare different jobs within education and what is needed for those jobs. So you'll notice there's administrative jobs, there's core subject jobs, there's non-core subject jobs, and then the support services. So sometimes we tend to focus on just being an elementary teacher, I shouldn't say just, being an elementary teacher or being a math teacher on the secondary level, but what are all of the different roles within education that students can actually go into? So this standard helps focus on that. Standard 2 talks about your personal philosophy of education. So you'll notice as we go throughout this and within the strands and standards themselves, I have them printed here, you'll see bolded words here, and it will say define whatever that term is and give the definition of that. So you want to make sure that the definition that you share with your students are the definitions that are given on the strands and standards, so that they have the correct definitions for when they take the state test. And we'll talk more about that later. But they'll develop their own personal philosophy of education, which is standard 2. Then each of the strands have performance skills. So within strand 1, there are actually 2 performance skills, and the students need to accomplish those performance skills and complete them with an 80% or above pass rate, meaning that they did what was required to do, and when you graded it, it was 80% or above. If not, then I would highly recommend assigning another assignment that covers this to get them to the 80% or above, so that they can get that skill cert or certification at the end. So just keep that in mind, 80% is what we're focusing on. So for the performance skills, it's things that they're actually going to do. So this first one says students will create a visual presentation reflecting on their experience and insights gained through an interview or observation using the Utah Effective Teaching Standards and Indicators in a career in administration, course subject, non-core subject, or support services. So they're going to just do an interview and then do some type of visual presentation. Now, what I love about the strands and standards this year is that the performance skills are related to Educators Rising. Now, some of you are asking, what is Educators Rising? And I'm going to share that with you. So Educators Rising is the club that's associated with the education pathway and with the Teaching as a Profession 3 class. So Educators Rising is a CTSO, a career or a student organization, and now my mind just went blank, but a student organization within CTE. So if you've heard of DECA or HOSA, FBLA, FCCLA, those are also CTSOs. So CTSOs are designed based upon curriculum. So things that are happening in your classroom is what happens within these CTSOs. So you, my friends, have the opportunity of being a club advisor with Educators Rising. So just a little bit about Educators Rising. There is a whole nother class on this Canvas, the summer conference, that you can learn about Educators Rising. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. 2 years ago in the state of Utah, we started using Educators Rising. So it's still relatively new to most people here. It's an opportunity for students on a school level to do activities, service, be involved, get to know other people, and then on a state level, be able to compete in competitions. So Educators Rising has a whole list of competitions that that students can compete in. On the Utah level, we have one competition. It's the state level, the state competition, and it is usually the end of February, 1st of March, somewhere in there, depending on if it's COVID or not. And students will have the opportunity to go and compete with the competitions that they've been working on for the year. So hopefully that doesn't confuse you about Educators Rising, but gives you a little bit more information about it. The competitions that they compete in depends on what they're interested in. And then when they compete at a state level, they're able, if they place first place, they're able to go to the national competition and compete there. So it's an exciting time, and we hope that all of you will be doing Educators Rising. You will love it. I did it, and it was so fun just to see the exciting things that the kids wanted to do and have fun, and it just gives them a place to be. So for the performance skills for Strand 1, the competitions that are directly related to this performance skills within Educators Rising is exploring education administration careers, exploring non-core subject teaching careers, exploring support service careers. Those are students go and observe people within those areas, and then they write about it and do a presentation at state about what they observed, what they learned. Is it something that they're actually interested in? So correlates directly. Then there is the creative lecture TED Talk. Who doesn't want to do a TED Talk? I feel like I'm doing one right now, only it's not really inspirational. And then public speaking and the Educators Rising Leadership Award. So those directly relate to this performance skill. The second one is the second performance skill for Strand 1 is students will create a verbal presentation about their philosophy of education that illustrates the power of being an educator. And with this one, this is more of the creative lecture TED Talk, public speaking, and Educators Leadership Award. Again, in the other class, you'll know more about Educators Rising and where to find these competitions. However, if you ever have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right, now we're moving on to Strand 2. So Strand 2 is students will define multiculturalism, diversity, and social economic status, explore self-awareness as a learner in an educational environment, and identify the different social, cultural, ethnic, and economic backgrounds in a classroom and how it affects students' performance in the classroom. So for Standard 1, lots of definitions that all deal with multiculturalism and diversity in the classroom. We're living in an age today where this is becoming more and more important, and we need to discuss the accepting of all cultures and of all diversity and embrace that diversity that everyone has. So this deals with that. Strand 2, Standard 2, explore and identify self-awareness as a learner in an educational environment. So they're going to go through and explore their own personal histories, values, and beliefs towards education, and then also identify biases, which is important as a teacher. Do I have a bias towards a group of people or to certain students? And how do you actually overcome those? So that's a great thing to look at for Standard 2. Standard 3 deals with the socioeconomic status, and they identify the different social, cultural, ethnic, and economic backgrounds in a classroom and how it actually impacts and affects students' performance. So you're going to look at the social economic status within different areas and how that impacts education. It's kind of fun to talk to people about how they feel socioeconomics affects education, because you get both sides. You get the extreme on one side that only the rich schools are going to succeed, and then you get the extreme on the other side that says, don't tell me we can't do anything because we're a poor school. So it's fun to talk. I think it's fun to talk about these things and see the different things. I'm on the poorer schools. Don't tell me we can't do anything because we're poor. We're going to show you what we can do. So it's kind of fun to see that aspect of it. The performance skills for Strand 2 there are two of them again for strand 2. So the first one, students will create an introductory activity that engages students to learn more about their peers. So think about some of the things you do to get to know your students and to have them know each other. So maybe you want to share some examples of those with your students and then have them actually create their own activity. And then the second one, students will create an interactive visual that highlights the local education community. So classroom, school, and community showcasing diversity. So I highlight how the education looks in their community. So again, tied to Educators Rising, because we want everybody to be part of Educators Rising and to do competitions. So 2 competitions that work for this performance or for these performance skills are teacher created materials contest and interactive bulletin board. All right, strand 3. Students will explore the Utah Effective Teaching Standards and Indicators. I hope you as teachers know that we actually have those, and identify common components of an effective lesson plan and develop lesson plans using state-approved standards. So you'll also notice within these links, and the links are actually in the strands and standards as well, that those links will take you to the effective teaching strand standards and indicators. So you can actually go through and look at those to get that information. Okay, so that is comparing those standards and indicators. And then strand 2 deals with the components of a lesson plan, which all teachers, we all have written so many lesson plans, and what is actually needed in each lesson plan. So it goes through and defines each one. Again, notice that the bold then gives the definition that we are looking for that particular term. Okay, and it goes through and all of the components of a lesson plan. Then standard 3 is to identify a state approved standard on the Utah State Board of Education website. Again, it takes you to that same standards list, and develop a lesson plan including all common components. So therefore they're going to choose one within these specific areas that they can do that for. And then standard 4 is reflect upon the common components of an effective plan, of an effective lesson plan. What works, what doesn't, what do they need to learn? How are we going to make this happen? How much time is needed? Can you get through everything? Is it going to be too short? I still remember my first time standing in front of the classroom, and I thought my lesson plan was so perfect. And it actually took like 20 minutes of a 90-minute class period. And I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? So the more that they can have that experience and realizing what actually does make it effective and how these students are going to learn and what we can have them do is a key thing for the lesson plan. So the performance skills for strand 3, the first thing is to create a rubric based on this effective teaching standards and indicators for students to use during classroom observations. So this is an opportunity for students to go and observe different classrooms and see what is happening in those classrooms and actually do a rubric of how well teachers are doing and come back and discuss that and see what they're learning in these observations. The second one is using a lesson plan template, which I forgot to highlight on this. There is a highlight in the strands and standards that you can click on to get the template. And so they can use that template that's provided by the state. They're going to develop a lesson plan that includes all the common components listed in strand 3, or in strand 3 standard 1 from a state approved standard. And this again applies to Educators Rising because we want you to do Educators Rising. It's not more work. Think of it as we've already done the work within class. This is just more opportunities for students. So that ties with lesson planning. Yes, there is a competition of lesson planning. I wonder how many of us could win that, right? Okay, that leads us to strand 4. Strand 4 is students will define various instructional methods and identify strategies to assess student understanding through instruction methods and effective questioning. So again, this is going to be a lot of definitions of what the different types of instructions are, and they give some examples of what they are. And maybe within your classroom, you could try a few of these, or so that students can actually get a feel instead of just talking about each of them. Strand 2, identify strategies to adapt to student learning. So what do students need to learn? How will they show that they've learned it? How do they demonstrate that? And what happens if they don't learn it? Like, do you need to reteach? Do you just move on? Do you forget about it? Well, if you're teaching it, then it must be important. So how do we reteach that? Okay. Strand 3 or standard 3 deals with assess student understanding by using effective questioning techniques. So what are the different types of questions to ask? Knowledge-based questions, open-ended questions, engagement questions, and it gives what each type are and how teachers actually use those in the classroom to gauge understanding. All right, and then our performance skill, there's only one for strand 4, and that is using a lesson plan template. Again, I forgot to put the link on, but the link is in the strands and standards. Develop and deliver a 5 to 7 minute lesson plan that includes a variety of instructional methods listed in strand 4, standard 1 from a state approved standards. So this again ties to educators' right. Ties to educators rising in the lesson plan and delivery so that they would actually create a lesson plan and actually do it in your class. That's part of the educators rising. It's actually one of their favorite things to do. So I highly encourage you, when you do this as your performance skill, just to do it as educators rising as well. All right, and then our last standard is standard, or our last strand, sorry, my phone's ringing again. Our last strand is strand 5. Students will apply effective strategies and learning methods to manage the classroom learning environment. So standard 1 is just, again, definitions about classroom management, and make sure that they're looking at what those definitions are that are given within these standards. Standard 2 explores classroom rules and procedures, what happens with positive enforcement and negative reinforcement, what happens on a classroom level or in a school level as well. So it looks at both of those things. And then the performance skills for this is just the one for strand 5, and students will compare and contrast multiple classrooms, observing effective and non-effective classroom management strategies. So this is a great opportunity, again, for students to do observations. And a lot of times, if your class is tied with CE stuff, they want the kids to go out and do observations. And now it's a performance skill within the state strands and standards. So get the kids doing observations. That's how they can see what works in classrooms, what doesn't work in classrooms, what great teachers are doing within their classrooms. It helps give them some ideas to help them in the future as well. And again, tied to Educators Rising. So this is Educators Rising Leadership Award and Researching Learning Challenges. So those are our strands, all 5 strands. Now, not a huge amount, but within the world of education, that's a lot of information to cover with these students. A couple of key things to note. Within the strands and standards, you're going to have a vocabulary list. So this vocabulary list is given at the end, and it lists all of those vocabulary words that are bolded within the strands and standards. So make sure that the students know those definitions. That's the key thing. Know those definitions, not definitions that are necessarily given on Google, but that are actually shared within here. Okay, that's what they need to know. And then at the end of the semester, all of the students will take the skills certification test. These are the CTE tests. If you're a CTE teacher, you already know about um, the skill certification. If you're not a CTE teacher, this will be a new experience for you. So every student who is in a CTE class takes the skill certification test. Tests vary in length according to whatever test that is. So for the education, teaching as a profession 3, this is the breakdown of the questions. So you'll notice for strand 1, there are 2 questions. For strand 2, there are 6 test questions. For strand 3, 11 test questions. Strand 4, 6 test questions. And strand 5, 5 test questions. So you'll notice this is going to help you with your scope and sequence in where am I going to spend the majority of my time talking about these things? What should I be hitting the hardest and what should my focus be on? This is going to help your students to know, or help your students when they take that skills test. And it helps you to know where you should be spending your time. So make sure you focus on those areas. Again, that information is shared on the last page of the state's strands and standards. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. I have talked way too long on a Zoom call for this, but I hope that helps. I hope that is it hasn't confused you, and I hope that you're excited. I'm really excited about the rewrite of these strands and standards. They are more focused on what should actually be happening within the state, within the class. Students will love it. Teachers will love it. It's a great curriculum, strands and standards. So we are going to pilot this program or this class this year. So this year is going to be our pilot year, and then they will for sure go into effect the next school year. So 21-22 pilot this, and you will all take that state test. For the pilot program, we want to make sure that everything's working out well. And then the next year, it is full in force. Okay. I would love to help anybody. If you have any questions, if you need some ideas about what to do, I would love to help you. Again, my name is Jill Hess. I'm at Davis High School as the CTE coordinator. I will make sure my information is all in Canvas. Please keep track of it. Shoot me an email, give me a phone call, whatever you would like to do. Any way that I can help you. I strongly encourage you to become an advisor in Educators Rising. It's not more work, it's just tied into your curriculum. It gives students more opportunities. You will love the experience, they will love the experience. It will be something that will be the highlight of their high school career. I hope that you love teaching as a profession 3. I think being a teacher is the greatest job a person can have. I've been a teacher for 21 years and it has changed my life. I love it. I look forward to coming to school every day. And I hope that these students will have that same desire as they complete this class and start the program. And I hope that we're all fighting for them to come and work in each of our districts, and that this continues to grow and we get some of the best teachers in the world coming to the state of Utah to teach our students. So thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish all of you the best of luck.